Byzantine Judaism and the kind of Babylonian, the one based on the Babylonian Talmud, kind of how they kind of divulged, they split and they kind of recombined. And I suppose you'd know so much on that.
What we have is the Mishnah is one, but the interpretations of the Mishnah are many. So the Jerusalem Talmud comes from the Romaniote Jews, who are the Jews of the Roman Empire, Greek-speaking Jews of the Roman Empire, because they were originally, before the Roman Empire, they were the Jews of the Seleucid Empire. But their Minhag, that means their tradition, their practice, comes from Seleucid times, which is, of course, Hasmonean and everything like that. So they then became the Jews of the Roman Empire, and they spread throughout all the Roman Empire, and they have their practices and traditions. And their interpretation of the Mishnah was written down eventually in something called the Jerusalem Talmud. And they have, for example, from the Romaniote, so the language of the Romaniote Jews is Koine Greek. So if you wanted to study first century Romaniote Judaism, you would study the Gospels, for example. So that's what I did, okay? because I'm interested in Romaniote Judaism, and I want to understand Romaniote Judaism in the Roman Empire. So you look at people like Philo before Jesus. You are going to study Philo because that's BC, and the Roman Empire conquered with Julius Caesar just like about 50 years before that. And then you're going to study Philo, and then you're going to study the Gospels and the New Testament, because it's all Jewish writings and it's in the same language. It's all in one language, Koine Greek, which is the Judaic. It's if you imagine Yiddish in comparison with German, you've got German and you've got Yiddish. Yiddish is essentially a German language, but it's got a lot of Jewish language in it. Likewise, Koine is like the Yiddish form of Greek. So you've got classical Greek, and then you've got Koine, which is like Judo Greek. So the Gospels are not written in classical Greek; they're written in Judo Greek.
I did not know that. Right?
Nobody knows this because they don't study Romaniote Judaism. Everybody's so interested in Aramaic things, and I don't know why nobody's interested in Romaniote Judaism. It doesn't make sense to me. So they were going on the Aramaic primacy of the Gospels, and I don't know why you'd do that, because everybody was Romaniote Jews anyway. So the primacy language would be Koine, of course. I don't understand why they do.
Philo was. Sorry, I might be completely off the radar, but was Philo like a Maccabee or one of them? Or...
No, he's not that long before Jesus. He lived in Egypt. In fact, he was still alive when Jesus would have been in Egypt. So he could have been easily Jesus's school teacher, for example, if depending on how long Jesus was in Egypt.
Okay, right.
So Philo was, but he was an old man. So he was a little bit before Jesus. So you'd study him, and you'd study the New Testament, and that's basically, and you study the Apocrypha, of the early Apocrypha, and that's basically your Romaniote Jewish introduction. And the Romaniote Jewish culture continues up until today. There's still about 2,000 Romaniotes still alive, still practicing, but their culture is almost gone.
Do they speak the same language, Koine Greek?
Yeah, Koine Greek is still the language. It's also called these days, because of the majority hegemony from the rest of the Jewish community. It's called Yavanit, which just means Yavan means Greek, essentially. Yavanit just means Greek. So they call it Yavanit, but that's not very clear definition of the language. The language actually is Judo-Greek, which is Koine. So you've got that group. So the Jerusalem Talmud goes into that. It doesn't mind talking about, for example, going into detail on the interpretations of Isaiah 53, which is, and in the Romaniote liturgy. Do you know what Isaiah 53 is about?
Yes, I do know Isaiah 53. Yeah.
Okay. Well. So there's no issue with going into the matter of Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53 has not been removed from the Romaniote Jewish liturgy. It's still there, and they call Messiah. Well, actually, we've got two different words in Hebrew. We've got. You should know that we have. The word Mashiach, we have Moshiach and Mashiach. Okay, we've got two words. Mashiach means the anointed one, and Moshiach means the savior. Okay, so we've got Mashiach is anointed, and Moshiach is savior. So in Koine Greek, the word Moshiach becomes Messias. Okay, that's the Koine Greek word for Moshiach, savior, Messias, and Messias, ironically, is translated into English as Messiah, which ironically is translated as anointed one, but it's actually a false translation, because it's not savior. Anointed one, it's savior. Yeah, that's the Koine Greek word for savior, from the Hebrew word Moshiach, Okay, and then you've got
Yeah.
Mashiach, which is translated into Greek as Christus. So that's Christ. So when you have in the Gospels reference to Messias and reference to Christus, you've actually got reference to Moshiach and Mashiach. Unfortunately, the way it's translated, I mean, if you're only living inside of the Judaic world and you're only interested in Romaniote Judaism, you're never going to think beyond that. You're just going to understand, okay, so Messias is Moshiach and Christus is Mashiach. But if you yes?
Sorry, so then Moshiach is anointed one.
Moshiach is Savior.
Sorry, got it the other way around. Moshiach is Savior and Messiah.
Sorry, there's no ch at the end. There's no chet. It's just open sound. Moshiach and Mashiach. Okay?
Right.
So Moshiach is Savior, Messias.
Okay.
Savior. There's no chet at the end of that word. Then you have Mashiach. Mashiach is anointed one, Christus. Okay, that's
right. Got it.
So those are the two words. So if your little world is Judaism and your little world is Romaniote Judaism, and you're looking at this, you're never going to think beyond that. You're going to say, okay, I understand. When I see the word Messias, it means Moshiach. When I see the word Christus, it means Mashiach. No problem. However, if you then expand your worldview to include what the other people, you suddenly come across, oh, that's strange. The Christians have translated the word Messias as Messiah, and in the English language, they say Messiah means anointed. Well, that's wrong.
Yeah.
But you've got 2 billion Christians who are against you, so how can you win? They're going to say, no, you're wrong. You've got this, it's instantly turned emotional, it's instantly turned into a fight, because you've got the majority view telling the minority that they're wrong, and the minority saying, well, we know the history. We know the language. It's our language. It's our books. Our books, they're Christian books. You're Jews. Well, they may be Christian books, but they were Romaniote Jewish books before they were Christian books. So how about paying a little bit of attention to the Romaniote point of view on things? Perhaps it might help you to understand some things, because you get this contradiction. He goes to the Samaritan woman, for example, and she says, well, I know that Messias is coming. And it doesn't even occur to the Christian mind that Samaritans only use 5 books of Moses. They don't use any of the rest of the Bible. They only use the 5 books of Moses, Pentateuch. And the word Mashiach, that's Christus, does not appear one time in the whole of the 5 books of the Pentateuch. It doesn't appear one time in the whole of the 5 books of the Pentateuch. All right, so why is she talking about Messias? Because she's not talking about Christus, she's talking about Messias. She's not talking about Mashiach, she's talking about, Moshiach. And the word Moshiach does appear, because even the word Mose is from the same root, Moshiach. So she's saying the one like Moses is going to come. There's the second Moses, one like Moses, so that's the Savior is going to come, because Moses is a Savior. So the Savior is going to come. So she's talking about the Savior. And then the text says that is the Christus. And that is like an interpretation of what she's saying. By the way, for the rest of us, if you're not a Samaritan, what she's talking about right now is Mashiach. So she says, I know that Moshiach is going to come. And the translation is, that is Mashiach, if you don't know what she's talking about. So the equation is made, very interestingly, in 1st century Judaism, which is not there in other parts, in other forms of Judaism, for example, Babylonian Judaism, but it's there in 1st century Romaniote Judaism. And the equation is that Moshiach, Savior, is Mashiach, Christ, in 1st century Romaniote Judaism. And you'll see that. So the reason I made this connection, it's a long story, but the reason I made this connection is to answer your question and show you. So there's an example of something which would be in Jerusalem Talmud, the Minhag of the Romaniote Jews, the Palestinian Minhag, is that there's no distinction between Savior and Christ. I should say, there's no distinction between Savior and Anointed One from the Jerusalem Talmud. But in the Babylonian Talmud, they are making a distinction between Savior and Anointed One. Savior is God. Anointed One is the Anointed One. But in the Romaniote, Savior and Anointed One are both referring to the same person. So there's an example, and they don't hide the Isaiah 53, which is about the suffering servant. And so in the end, you get this. Isaiah 53 is almost censored from the liturgies which come from the Babylonian Talmud. So you've got quite a significant difference. It's like one side is almost saying, well, I'm open to the possibility, if you can present the evidence to me, why Jesus might have been the fulfillment of these prophecies, then go ahead. Otherwise, versus the other side saying, we're not going to listen to any of those arguments. We've lost too many people to that. So we're going to close the doors and say, no, we'll just cut it out of our liturgies and we will not have a listen to it anymore.
Yeah. Also, well, obviously you set up your camps, the Christians do it, and there's some people from the higher up from in using the Babylonian Talmud might do it. But it's interesting how the Romaniote Jews kind of just left it in there, and
well, they're not afraid.
They didn't.
Yeah,
they didn't bother about it too much. Yeah,
no, they survived. They managed to survive as a Jewish community amongst the Byzantines in Christendom for 2,000 years, so almost 2,000 years. So they had other things which they thought were more important than whether this first century rabbi was the Messiah or not. There are other things which they felt were more precious that made them hold on to Judaism, other than whether Jesus is Messiah. There was something else about the Romaniote community which was more important to them about Judaism, while the other side wasn't. And so, for example, here, it is another interesting thing. When we have there's a reference to Menashe. There's somebody called Menashe who was a heretic, and his punishment in hell is he's burning in excrement. That's what he's, according to the traditions which passed down. And they in the Jerusalem Talmud, they don't mind referring to him as Menashe. He's Menashe. Whereas in the Babylonian Talmud, they say Yamach Shmo V'Zircho, which means may his name and memory be obliterated, and they write the acronym for Yamach Shmo V'Zircho, may his name and memory be obliterated, because they don't like Menashe, and those letters are Yod, Shin, Vav, which is read by most people as Yeshu. So they say Yeshu is burning in excrement. And so this leads to another example of, well, the Jerusalem Talmud preserves the original, and the Babylonian Talmud is a censored form. So, and of course, as a result of the Babylonian Talmud, you get a lot of, again, people who hate Judaism trying to argue that Judaism is really has horrendous things to say about Jesus, because the Talmud says that Yeshu is burning in excrement, and they interpret Yeshu as meaning Jesus, whereas the Jerusalem Talmud makes it very clear that that's Menashe. So it's got nothing to do with Jesus. So there we go.
It's like again, I think